Switzerland, a landlocked country with no access to the sea, has had a long-lasting sailing and water sports culture, as numerous alpine lakes provide a great playground for windsurfing, foiling, and other water sports. One of the very best areas is the Engadin, a long, high alpine valley region which hosts on Lake St. Moritz and Lake Silvaplana one of the world's biggest and most acclaimed water sports events, the Vanora ENGADINWIND by Dakine. In 2021, we organized the iQFoil World Championship, the first World Championship that has ever taken place. Of course, we have all the world's best here, and there are 250 athletes from 42 countries. At the moment, iQFoil is the biggest windsurfing class worldwide, and it's the new Olympic discipline for Paris in 2024. Matteo Iacchino is here, and he's one of the best racers ever in the World Cup. Then we have Amado Vrieswijk from Holland, or to be exact from Bonaire, who in my opinion is the most talented windsurfer in the world. Then there's Nico Goyard, who has won the last World Cup on the foil and who is unbelievably talented and strong. The Brits are here with a strong team: Sam Sills, Matthew Barton.
What is really cool of iQFoil class is that we have slalom sailors from the PWA, we have ex-Olympic sailors from RSX, we have freestylers from the PWA, we have a big community of Formula windsurfing. So all these different groups are gathered now in the new iQFoil class.
Is actually creating unification in the windsurfing world that never happened before. Before you had to choose between two paths. One is the professional windsurfing tour with freestyle, wave, slalom, and as a racer or something. And the other path was the Olympic class. So I think this is the first time in the windsurfing history that is actually more unified, and we are here all together, and we can create a better future for windsurfing.
I enjoy the iQFoil class because it's fun and good feeling on the foiling, and also because we have a mix of format with some upwind downwind courses which are really tactical, and also some slalom racing where it's more about speed and adrenaline.
iQ compared to the R6, of course, we have more speed. We go quicker around the course. And I think somehow because of the foil, we have new lines. Like we are able to sail maybe a little bit lower and faster and get almost at the same pace to the upwind mark, or a little bit higher and slower. The tacks are so much quicker.
It's basically girls and guys going 18 knots upwind, pushing 30 knots downwind, closing speeds of 40 and 60 knots. Above the water with no sound, so you can't hear anyone coming towards you, and you essentially have a carbon knife at the back of your board. So yeah, it's a really kind of excitingly dangerous sport.
It's about speed and it's about adrenaline, but the fact is it is all the best parts of racing, except everyone is super close together. Everyone is learning how to do this class because there's no set way of doing it, so there's experimenting, there's innovation.
We're just in a new era and we just have to make it great. There is like so many things to learn at the same time as sailors and as organizers, and that we have to deal with it to know what are the limits, to make some great events, to make it good for the athletes.
This year's edition started once again in St. Moritz, where the world's top windsurfers gathered for an iQFoil exhibition race in the stunning surroundings of the St. Moritz Sailing Club. Some of the biggest stars in windsurfing, Olympic windsurfers, world and European champions, and PWA winners were in attendance to showcase the equipment that will replace RSX and celebrate its premiere at the next Summer Olympic Games in Paris in 2024. The world's best sailors showed why the new iQFoil Olympic discipline will be an exciting addition to the next Summer Olympics, and with the Maloya wind providing great sailing conditions, the stars of the new iQFoil class showed off their skills. With slalom and course races taking place, the crowds got a first-hand taste of the upcoming iQFoil World Championships on the neighboring Lake Silvaplana, and the sailors also enjoyed this first exhibition race.
It was really nice being with the girls there and racing in the slalom. There was Sarakita, that she's amazing with everything she does.
We were only 5 women and I think 10 men from all over the world. And it's cool because the lake is very small, we get very close to the public, you can hear them screaming for you, so that's very exciting.
With the races in St. Moritz wrapped, it was time for the main event of the week, the iQFoil World Championships. During the opening ceremony, the world's best sailors enjoyed some traditional Engadin culture, and the focus of the 2021 ENGADINWIND shifted now to the main venue, Lake Silvaplana, the biggest lake in the Grisons canton and the ideal host location for the largest foiling fleet ever, with more than 250 sailors in attendance. The lake is at 1,800 meters altitude, and what's special here is that we have a thermal wind system in the summer, which is the Maloya wind. It arrives every day at lunch like clockwork at 12 o'clock and blows across all the lakes here, and that's why this whole area is very interesting for water sports.
We get southwesterly wind, what they call the Maloya wind, and it needs to be sunny. Usually it's pretty warm, as contrast to the water, which is pretty cold, and it's pretty much world-class conditions.
Yeah, the wind is interesting. You notice we're high, you notice the air is thinner. I think there's a special thing here because the low density of the air and maybe the cold water, we go so quick, like over 60 km an hour, so it's like a special speed foiling lake.
This place is absolutely stunning. You wake up in the morning and you look around at the mountains and you kind of, I mean, it's breathtaking all the time just seeing it. And then the wind comes in like clockwork, 12 o'clock, we race, and then we're finished by 6 o'clock.
It's paradise, it's paradise. I think it's definitely in the top 3 places in the world for the best foiling. It's consistent, the water is flat as a pancake. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
iQFoil comes from innovation quality, so it's a very high-tech equipment at the Olympic class, and it's a WEN design, so everybody's sailing with the same equipment. When we compare this equipment to the professional tour equipment, it's very similar, it's right there on text, so now we have, let's say, like a Formula 1 car at the Olympics. Below, we have a simple foil of 1 mast and 2 wings. The front wing is a 900 square cm wing, and the back is 255. So with these 2 wings, it works like an airplane. When you start getting speed, it wants to lift, it wants to come up, and that's how the board comes out of the water. And it's so both connected by a fuselage that connects to the mast. The mast is 95 cm long, and what that makes is that when you have waves, you are sailing above the waves without touching. The wings are carbon fiber made, the fuselage is aluminum, and the mast again is carbon. The board is a 95 cm board. The bigger the board is, the better it planes in lighter wind and the better ability to race in lighter winds. This board looks very different to other windsurfing boards. It's very, very wide at the tail. Why? Because when you're on foil, you want to really have your back foot really far out and have a really proper and correct stance. We have some foot straps here in the back, so when you're going on starboard, you put your front foot here and your back foot there. The deck of the board is carbon and has some anti-slip so you don't slip away. And then here we have some pads, so when you're sailing, you have some softer area here to have better transmission of your effort into the board. Here we have the mast space. This pin is where we connect the sail. This sail differs to other windsurfing sails. It's very short on boom and very high on mast. The men use 9 meter and the girls use an 8 meter sail. So the further up the mast and the shorter boom just gives you a much more comfortable feel when you are up on foil. This equipment is all very balanced and equilibrated that we get to 30 knots to 32 knots of speed when we're doing slalom, and then when we're doing upwind downwind courses we're going 20 to 25 knots of speed. The boom is a carbon fiber boom, then the sail, you can see the main material of the sail is a monofilm, so then it's very tight. We can see the top of the sail is opening a little bit on twist, and then the sleeve, which is very wide, gives you a lot of stability.
The first few days of the iQFoil World Championship saw a number of different qualification races, both in the slalom and in the course race categories, and more than 70 women competed in the silver and gold fleets. In mostly great conditions, France's Helene Noisman dominated the early races, and her consistent performances saw her build up a solid lead going into the medal races. Last year's European and World Windfoil champion displayed her supreme foiling skills with the 2 standout sailors of a strong British fleet, Islay Watson and Saskia Sills, going into the medal races in 2nd and 3rd places respectively. Germany's Lena Erdel had some mixed performances but managed to scrape through to the medal races in 12th position. Sarah-Kita Ofringa is one of windsurfing's true ambassadors, and the 17-time world champion from Aruba was back in Silvaplana to share her stoke for the sport that has been her life.
Windsurfing, I love the sport in itself because you can always learn something new, but what I love the most about it is that it's a whole lifestyle. Traveling to new places, experiencing new cultures, meeting people that have the same passion, but it's people from all over the world, you know, so there's always something new you can learn from them. I'm here at the Engadin Wind for the second time. First of all, I think it's a very beautiful location. For me, it's insane to be sailing with such surroundings, mountains with snow on top of it. The watercolor is amazing. It's like an icy blue that you don't find in many places. I think it's a melting pot of water sports, and especially here, for example, on the camping, you just walk around and it's only water sport fanatics here. So it's a very motivating and inspiring environment to be in. Where I'm from in Aruba, freestyling is all I saw, so windsurfing means freestyling to me. I've won 12 world titles in freestyling. It is my favorite discipline because it's very expressive. There's no limits to the jumps and the maneuvers and combinations that you can do. Slowly I was like, you know, looking for the next challenge after freestyling. So that for me naturally was slalom. For slalom, you get the most adrenaline rush, I would say. Training it is fun, but once you're competing, that's like the best thing in the world. Competed on the slalom tour, won a couple of titles in that one. And finally in 2019, I also succeeded and won the wave world title. Wave sailing to me is quite new. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, but I feel like there's so much to progress in still. There's always different conditions. You're either wave riding or you're jumping, or there's spots where you could do wave riding and jumping at the same time. Big waves, small waves. There's so many possibilities. IQ has not been my priority this year, but there's always something itching. Like I always want to learn something new, and so I have been training a bit, and I think I can still learn so much in foiling, so that's why I'm very interested. What I'm searching for in windsurfing is just constant progress. I want to become the best windsurfer that I can be. Like I want you to be able to throw me out in any conditions and I would still have fun in doing so, whether it's freestyle, wave, slalom, anything. So I just like all aspects of windsurfing.
It's the finals day. As the favorites for the women's title get ready for the medal races, you can feel the tension rising. Everything has come together on the biggest race day of the year, and all eyes are on Helene Noisman from France.
The standout performer is Helene Noisman. She's incredible. I have so much respect for her. She's been smashing us all to pieces all week. I think she's won pretty much every single race. She's just in a league above everyone.
There is a lot to play today. Anything can happen. All the girls will be pushing hard to get any medal. We will be 4 in the final, and there is only 3 medals, so everybody will be trying to do her best. Yeah, let's go to win the world title.
The best from all nations are here. Many nations are here with a strong team, especially France and England are extremely strong nations that have brought a lot of good women. In the quarterfinal race, the 8 lowest-ranked sailors from the top 12 of the qualification series battled it out for 4 places in the semi-final, and it was a bad start for Germany's Lena Erdl. Norway's Helle Oppendal, on the contrary, immediately took the initiative and after a strong race sailed away with the win ahead of Belbeoch, Cousin, and La Madrid, who all qualified for the semi-final. As the semi-final got underway, Helle Oppendal was disqualified and 2 of the 4 remaining sailors had the chance to go through to the final. Early on, Israel's Shachar Rashif and Great Britain's Saskia Sills went into the lead, with the Israeli making a place at the front. But at the first turn, Spain's La Madrid caught up with the leader and overtook her, with both sailors now battling it out together at the front. But as the sailors tacked, Saskia Sills took the gamble and tacked early, nailing the ley line and moving into second place, with Rashif right behind her. In a tight finish, La Madrid won the semis ahead of Sills, with both going through to the final.
2, 1.
2 Brits, 1 Spaniard, and a French sailor started in the final race for the first ever iQFoil world title, and shortly after the start, disaster struck for Spain's La Madrid when she crashed and was pretty much out of the medal race. At the front, the dominant sailor of the week and title favorite Helene Noisman from France took the initiative and led the race early on ahead of Britain's Islay Watson. Like in the other races, Noisman looked in complete control throughout the final, but the 2 British sailors, Watson and Sills, kept up the pressure behind her. But Noisman's devastating board speed once again proved too much, and the Frenchwoman left the Brits trailing even further behind. After nailing the last ley line, there was no stopping her, and the most consistent sailor of the week secured the first ever iQFoil world title, with Watson narrowly beating her compatriot Sills to secure second place.
It feels really great. It was a hard race on a hard day with a really shifty wind, so I'm really happy to win at the end. And it's a big relief after this week to win the world title.
Helena Noisman.
For the men's qualification races, Lake Silvaplana once again delivered perfect wind conditions, and the on-water action was exciting. With more than 170 sailors battling it out for the 12 places in the medal races, it was a packed racing schedule with some fierce battles. Some of the favorites, like Italy's former PWA world champion Matteo Iacchino and Dutch freestyle legend Amado Friesvik, were knocked out in the qualifying rounds and didn't go through to the medal races. Germany's Sebastian Cordell showed consistent performances and qualified in 7th place, 1 place below strong Dutch sailor Huig Jan Tak, who clearly enjoyed sailing on Lake Silvaplana. But the standout performances came from Great Britain's Matthew Barton, who qualified in 3rd place, 2nd place Luc van Opsalan from Holland, and France's Nicolas Goyard, who dominated most of his races and showed why he is widely considered as the favorite for the title. In the men's field, one of the strongest athletes is Germany's Sebastian Cordell, a sailor who has been attending the ENGADINWIND for years. This year, this is definitely the biggest windsurfing event, and it's important that it takes place and is organized as it is. Generally, the vibe here at the ENGADINWIND is super cool. It's been a long story with me in Lake Silvaplana. I always like coming here. It's a great location with super races and strong wind, so I'm always happy to be here. When we started doing the windsurfing versus sailing versus kiting event, it was super fun, and I was there from the beginning and was always one of the athletes competing for the windsurfers. Then there's the Engadin Marathon, which is one of the most prestigious races in the whole windsurfing world. When I won it for the first time, I think it was 2008, it was something really big for me, my first men's contest I could win. It's definitely a moment I won't forget very quickly, and that I managed to win it again twice is obviously cool, as now I belong to a group of people who have won the ENGADINWIND several times. In the beginning, I couldn't drive myself, so my dad always came with me. When Christian asked when he needed someone on the boat, and my dad's got a medical education so he can help if something happens, he of course said yes and got involved. I met my girlfriend, Helena Wamser, last year at the IQ European Championship. It's nice to have someone who takes part in races herself and understands everything. It helps me and her as well to race better and feel better mentally. This year is definitely the most important event here at Lake Silvaplana, and for the first time there's a true title. We'll have a world champion here, and that's why the tension is high. If you want to win here, you need to be a complete windsurfer. You've got to be quick, technically good, you need the right body, and you need to be fit. You can neither be too light nor too heavy. It now becomes more obvious what you need to win. The level is incredibly high, so everything needs to come together, and on top of that, you also need some luck. Otherwise, you won't win here. On Sunday, there's so much tension, the air is almost burning, and everyone knows now it really counts. On the morning of the men's medal races, Sebastian Cordell and all the other sailors get themselves ready. The anticipation is palpable, and the preparation of the equipment is as important as the final tactical considerations. On a day like this, there is no margin for error.
You've got to get a really good start, you've got to be getting clean wind, and you've got to sail fast. And as long as you do that and make some smart decisions around the race course, you'll be at the front. But if you make any mistakes, it will be punished because there's so many good people. Yeah, Nico's the one to beat.
I'm a bit nervous, of course, because everything is back to zero for the final. and just like, I wanted to be down. Like, we'll go for it, see how it goes, and the result will be the result. I've shown what I've had to show this week, and that's it.
I'm also really nervous, but I always tell myself that's what you've trained for. That's what all the effort was for. The pain, blood, sweat, and tears now all come together. I'm happy to be in this position because it's a privilege to be in the top 12, and whatever happens on the water, happens on the water, and I'm going to take it as it comes. In the men's quarterfinal, 8 sailors faced each other to battle it out for the 4 places in the semifinal. After a strong start, Germany's Sebastian Cordell and the 2 British sailors Sam Sills and Finn Hawkins took an early lead, with Cordell passing the first mark ahead of the rest of the field. As the sailors tacked for the first time, Sam Sills momentarily took over the lead, but then Sebastian Cordell flew past him again to restore his dominance. With Cordell being the first to tack at the ley line, there was no stopping the German, and he used his experience and knowledge of Lake Silvaplana to stay ahead of the Brit duo Sills and Hawkins. After a dominant performance, the 30-year-old German won the quarterfinal race ahead of Sills and Hawkins and Dutch sailor Jan Tak. In the semifinals, 6 sailors were up against each other with only 2 final places up for grabs. In a frantic start, the sailors went flying down Lake Silvaplana, and the 2 Brits, Andy Brown and Matthew Barton, maneuvered themselves to the front, but the field still stayed close together. After the first mark, Sebastian Cordell decided to take a lower line, and after successfully tacking, the sailors headed downwind again with Matthew Barton and Andy Brown in the lead. But the race was far from over, and 5 sailors were still in the mix for the top 2 spots in the final. Sebastian Cordell and Huik Jan Tak tried to make their move, as all sailors pumped as hard as they could to keep their positions. The race stayed close, but when the sailors tacked again, Cordell hit the ley line and moved into second place. At the front, Matthew Barton looked in control, with Cordell now following him in second place. After a convincing performance, British sailor Matthew Barton brought home the victory ahead of Germany's Sebastian Cordell, who both qualify for the final. It was time for the final, with 1 British, 1 Dutch, 1 German, and 1 French sailor facing off against each other. As the start horn went, the 4 finalists were off, and right from the beginning, the pace was frantic. Dutch youngster Luc van Opseland had the best start, moving himself into the lead ahead of race favorite Nicolas Goyard from France and Matthew Barton from Great Britain. Sailing around the first mark, van Opseland was in the lead, but the 4 finalists were still close together, and the World Championship title race was still wide open. As the sailors went for the first tack maneuver, the field spread out, and British sailor Matthew Barton was closing in on the Dutchman. With 3 sailors, Van Opseland, Barton, and Goyard, still in striking distance of each other, the decisive moment in the final came at the next turning mark, when Barton and Opseland went to the left and Goyard decided to go right. The Frenchman, who had been dominating his qualification races all week, was flying down Lake Silvaplana, but was it the right decision, or would Barton, Cordell, who also went left, and Opseland come out on top? Despite having to do an extra tack, Goyard never looked in doubt and really went for it, showing his supreme sailing skills and racing pedigree. As the 4 finalists were closing in on each other again, Van Opseland and Cordell underlaid it, giving Goyard the chance to move into second place as he passed the next turn just behind Matthew Barton. Now it was a head-to-head battle between Barton and Goyard, and on the second last jibe mark, the 2 sailors were still right next to each other, but then Nicolas Goyard was edging ahead of the Brit just slightly. After mastering the final jibe mark, Goyard couldn't be stopped anymore, and the man in the yellow jersey sailed home to secure the first ever iQFoil World Championship title ahead of Barton and Opseland and Cordell. What a race and what a triumph for Nicolas Goyard.
I managed to come first after the week, so it was like kind of a big job already. And then like to make everything back to zero and to make it all over again, it's so good, like really. I think so far this is my biggest victory, to have this where like there is so many good opponents, that like some really good sailors around, and like it's been tricky all the week. I'm super happy.